Joining us tonight is Harmeet Dhillon, RNC committeewoman for California, member of the 2020 Trump Advisory Council. She's also suing California to stop millions of ballots being sent to inactive voters and doing other things that I think could come under the heading of the Lord's work. Harmeet, great to have you with us. Let's start with how is this vote by mail nonsense going? Are the Dems going to win on this? Are they going to be harvesting ballots and doing all sorts of shoddy, sinister things?
Well, yes and no, Lou. As a result of the lawsuit that we filed in California, we won a partial victory today in that the state of California, instead of having this done by the governor's order, has passed a law that really defines it. So, you know, that's part of the issue. But the other part of the issue, as you said, is ballot harvesting. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to change that, at least in California. So it's really important that Republicans protect these interests by voting in Republicans in other states so that this disease we have in California, ballot harvesting and ballot box stuffing, doesn't happen there.
Did I just hear you say that California is lost? It's beyond even the idea of integrity, let alone the practice of it at the polls?
Well, in our lawsuit, we're going to be continuing to proceed there on the issue of the fact that the state has not cleaned up its rolls. There are ballots potentially being mailed to people who are dead, who have moved, who are ineligible to vote. So that is still a live issue. And that is still something that, frankly, the United States Department of Justice really could and should step in on. But in terms of the ballot harvesting, that's not something that we're going to be able to roll back, unfortunately, Lou.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's also unfortunate in New Jersey. It's unfortunate in New York. It's unfortunate in state after state.
Yes.
The Republicans are going to get rolled in November. Is that what you're saying? We're going to get rolled?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I think that we are stepping up. I know the RNC is intervening in a number of different states.
Let me add then some nuance. It looks like we're going to get rolled, to me. Am I wrong?
I think in blue states, the deck is stacked against us, and it already was, Lou. So I don't think we can plan on President Trump sweeping New York, New Jersey, California. The real battleground is going to be in congressional races and in Senate races in those blue states. And there, we have to keep fighting. Michigan is a challenge. So Michigan is going forward with mailing requests for ballots. So it's not universal vote by mail like California, but they are mailing applications to people. I don't think that's as big a deal as actually sending them the ballots. People can vote by mail in those states. It's already legal to do that. So the question is the state and is the DOJ, by the way, going to enforce the obligation to have clean rolls? If there are clean rolls, one person, one vote, no dead people, no multiple votes, I think we're in a much better situation to have an honest vote. Where we don't have that, and that's the case in many states, California, Michigan, and others, then we need to do a better job. But like I said, we do have a Department of the Justice that is supposed to go in and help with those issues, and it frankly hasn't brought those cases for many years.
Very quickly, as we wrap up here, there's so much we could talk about in the law and politics. DACA today, the ruling by the Supreme Court, it looks to me like John Roberts has lost his mind. That's some of the most tortured reasoning I've ever seen by a Chief Justice. It looks like the margin for his intellectual capacity diminishes each time he goes with the liberals.
I don't think it's intellectual capacity, Lou. I think it's worse than that. I think it is results-oriented jurisprudence, which is really bad no matter who is doing it. And we obviously began to see that with the Obamacare pseudo-tax ruling that he had, and then so many others after that. He really cares about being liked more than being right. And so his ruling today made absolutely no sense. It is a disaster. It is fractured. It's hard to tell what's the majority ruling and what isn't. And it's all over the place. And I think, as you pointed out earlier, Justice Thomas really had the best word on this. And we have allowed an administrative state to grow up in this country. And this is what we are reaping from that. It is that bureaucrats rule the day, judges make up the law, and the rule of law is thrown out the window. So that is why we need 4 more years of President Trump.
That's one of the reasons of many. Harmeet Dhillon, great to see you. Thanks so much. Come back soon.